The Taliban today celebrated Afghanistan's Independence Day. They've renamed the country the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan and are ready with the blueprint of how they hope to govern. The president of the Islamic State of Afghanistan will be called the Rais-e-Wuzara. And the Taliban have made one thing clear: their government will not be a democracy and that religion will supersede and determine their form of governance.
The takeover is complete. They've secured the streets. They've captured the airports. They've harvested all the weapons and aircraft. They've quelled even the smallest protests. And now they're ready to rule Afghanistan, to impose their will on a war-weary people. But beyond the smoke and noise of Afghanistan's collapse into the hands of the Taliban, one must ask, what is Talibanistan going to look like? Reuters gets you the most detailed inside view on what Taliban Raj will actually be like. The first question, who will be president?
The head of the council, as you call the president, we would call that Rais al-Wuzara, or the head of the council, and we will have ministers. All the ministers would be appointed by this council and by the head of the council. Amir al-Mu'mineen is our leader, religious leader. He wouldn't play the role of president. He would play more prominent role. We will have a person, or maybe his deputy would play the role of president.
In other words, definitely not a democracy. The Taliban makes it explicit that religion will pervade their governance and politics, and the Taliban's supreme leader, Haibatullah Akhundzada, will likely have the last word on Taliban Raj. The power structure that Hashimi outlines bears similarities to how Afghanistan was run the last time the Taliban were in power from 1996 to 2001. Then the supreme leader, Mullah Omar, remained in the shadows and left the day-to-day running of the country to this religious council. The Taliban's supreme leader has three deputies: Maulavi Yaqub, son of Mullah Omar, Sirajuddin Haqqani, leader of the powerful militant Haqqani network, and Abdul Ghani Baradar, who heads the Taliban's political office in Doha. The next big question, any changes in the country's laws?
The system of the government is clear. That is an Islamic government. Sharia law would be, of course, there would be no democratic system at all, because it doesn't have any base in our country. That is we are working on. In Afghanistan, our leadership in Qatar, they all are working on it.
We've reported here on India Today that the Taliban has harvested huge stocks of aircraft and weapons from the disintegrating Afghan National Army. But who'll operate all these armaments and fly these planes?
About previous army and military, that is collapsed, finished. So now if we want to hire them and bring them back to this rank, so definitely we will call them, and we need them because they have high training. Most of them got training in Turkey and Germany and England, so we need them, and we will call them to get back to their positions.
One of the most heated questions has been the fate of women under Taliban Raj, while nobody is buying the Taliban's assurances yet.
We are Muslims. People in Afghanistan, 99.999% are Muslims, and they believe in Islam. When you believe in a law, so definitely you should apply that law. Our ulama will decide whether girls are allowed to go to school or not, one. Second, they will decide whether they should wear hijab, burqa, or only veil, plus abaya or something, or not.
With plans in place, the world gets ready to watch Taliban Raj roll out once again. Remember, during their 1996 to 2001 rule, the Taliban stopped women from working, girls were not allowed to go to school, and women had to wear burqas to go out, and then only when accompanied by a male relative. Those who broke any rules sometimes suffered humiliation and public beatings by the Taliban's religious police. The first few days of Taliban Raj inspire no confidence. But with the world's biggest superpower now out of the way, the new rulers of Afghanistan have a plan. Bureau Report, India Today.
India Today is the only television channel that has been able to reach out to the top Taliban leadership. Our correspondent Ashraf Wani spoke to Taliban leaders Khairullah Khairwaha and Abdul Salam Hanafi on Afghanistan's future and how they intend to rule and what they think about Afghanistan's relationship with India.
9 members political forum of the Taliban has reached Afghanistan. They entered first to the Kandahar, which is the main city of Taliban where it got its birth. Then they proceeded to the Kabul. Headed by Maulana Baradar Abdul Ghani, the delegation has made it clear that they are with its word what they have announced. So far they have clearly said that they are announcing amnesty for all and will protect not only the Afghans but in fact all the civilians who are inside the Afghanistan from different countries. Today or tomorrow, the final shape of the Taliban government will be formed and it will be clear that who is going to head the Afghanistan. So far, India Today is only the channel which has got first reaction from the high-profile political bureau of Taliban in Kandahar.
Pardon all Afghan officials who went against us. No one is our enemy from now on. We hope people realize this.
هیچ افغان هم په دغه تصور نه په ذهن نه په سترګو ویني چې هغه څه د دښمنۍ احساس وکړي.
این جای خیلی خوشحالی است که ما بعد از بسیار وقت
It is a happy occasion. We are back in our nation after long.
امروز یک هیئت عالی امارت اسلامی افغانستان از دفتر
Happy that all cities are under our control.
رهبری
Will ensure respect for all Afghan officials.
اینجا همچنانی که برادر ما فرمودند واقعا
Won't destroy livelihoods, won't take land.
امروز ما همشهریان خود را الحمدلله اینجا می‌بینیم و
Don't flee Afghanistan out of fear. Urge those who fled Afghanistan to come back.
خاص طرف ما مردم عفو عمومی اعلان شده است. ما می‌خواهیم هیچ کس باید
Everyone will get entitled dues.
کسایی که رفتند هم بیایند به وطن خود بیایند بشینند در خانه‌شان.
Lots of sacrifices to build Afghanistan of today.
دیگه پراپرتی که دارند اونا همه محفوظ است. ما
We will follow law of the land.
نه به خانه کسی ضرورت داریم نه به موتر کسی ضرورت داریم. بیایند وطن عزیز خود با هم از طرف ما هیچ تشویش نداشته باشند.
طالبان का नायब अमीर मुल्ला अब्दुल गनी बिरादर के हमरा 9 अफरादी सियासी ग्रुप कंदहार पहुंच गए। तालिबान के इन सियासी मेंबर्स का कहना है कि आज़ादी इनकी हक थी जो उन्होंने हासिल कर ली। तालिबान ने एक दफ़ा फिर सरकारी अहदेदारों और शहरियों को माफ़ी का ऐलान किया और कहा कि सबको हुकूक फराहम होगी और अफगान सरजमीन किसी के खिलाफ इस्तेमाल नहीं होगी। सदीकुल्लाह खान, आज तक कंदहार।
At this moment, the Taliban would have us believe that they've learned lessons from their last time in power, that women will have an active role in the new emirate of Afghanistan, that this is not a throwback into the dark ages. Rather, it's an emirate which is very different from what the world would expect the Taliban to do. But is that for real? What do different people in Afghanistan think of the unfolding situation? Joining me for perspective, I have some really sharp voices from across the spectrum. I want to welcome first Ambassador Muhammad Ashraf Haidari. He was the Afghan ambassador to Sri Lanka. At this moment, the status is a bit complicated. I'll ask him, how he sees himself being placed given the change in the leadership. He's also been the Deputy Chief of Mission to India. So those who track foreign policy know him well. He's been Director General of Policy and Strategy at the Foreign Affairs Department in Afghanistan from 2015 to 18. We have Faiz Zalan, Professor at Kabul University, a political commentator, joining us from Kabul. Also, Mr. Zaland was a delegate representing the Afghan government during the US-Taliban deal in Doha. Marzia Mohammadi is a Hazara activist, refugee advocate, very passionate about female empowerment, inclusion of refugee communities, joining us from Adelaide in Australia, where it will be really late at this moment, so deeply appreciate Marzia Mohammadi for joining us. Tamanna Ziar is a student at Kabul University, member of Her Afghanistan, joining at this moment from Washington, DC. I want to go across to Ambassador Haidari first, because you were sent by the previous dispensation as the ambassador to Afghanistan. How do you see your status at this moment? Is there any way of knowing whether you're still ambassador? Do you want to stick on with this government, the new Taliban government? Will you be their ambassador? Given the change that's happened, I'm really wondering how you see your own status at this moment, Ambassador. Welcome, sir.
Well, thank you. I think the way you word your question is really wrong when you say the former ambassador or the previous dispensation. You should recognize the fact that the Afghan state, Afghan government is still internationally recognized. So are all our diplomats around the world. The Taliban have not been recognized. They're a long way from international recognition as a result of their diplomacy and diplomatic relations. Yes, the government has been taken over by the Taliban, but we need to wait and watch and see what happens, because there are meetings and talks everywhere as far as how the Taliban would include other Afghan voices. Remember that they're only one group, but there are many other groups. They're just one group among many others. True, yes, they are in power currently, but not recognized by the Afghan people, as much as, of course, they've already stifled Afghans, suppressed Afghans, blacked out our freest media in the region, and as well as the international community, which I pointed out. As a result, that's why I have my flag behind me, and I'm talking to you as the current ambassador of Afghanistan to Sri Lanka.
That's good. I'm very glad to hear that. Because nobody really wanted the Taliban to take over. They have. That's an unfortunate reality. We heard in that comment in the interview we did with one of the leaders of the Taliban, saying that we want current government officials, army officials, others who've been trained internationally and in Kabul to stay on with the government. We want them to come back to work. Do you believe the Taliban leadership when they make these kind of comments? Do you think this is just a ruse? Would you, for example, ever think about, being part of a Taliban administration if that's the reality which you're now dealing with and that's a fact? Or do you think this is a complete no-go for people such as yourself?
Well, I'm not a political appointee. I'm a foreign service officer of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. What the Taliban so far said doesn't necessarily match with, their actions on the ground. So it really takes some time for the employees and officials of the Afghan government to accept and believe what they've been saying. So they need to walk the talk, and we will see that in the coming weeks and months, and as well as how they would do in the talks as they happen these days, whether they would truly include Afghan voices, Afghan groups in a meaningful where they would share power in a way that is representative, in a way that would help consolidate the gains the Afghan people have made. And those gains are, very much in the best long-term interest of the Afghan people and our country. There's nothing that is detrimental to our national security interests now and in the future. Those achievements, as we all know, are the rights of women, the rights of all Afghans, as well as economic and social, political gains and achievements that only need to further be consolidated and institutionalized in an arrangement that is acceptable by all sides in a pluralistic society, one that really ensures long-term stability, long-term peace and security, because exclusion will not bring about that kind of unity in Afghanistan. we have been through exclusions, and that happened under the Taliban.
Okay.
Unfortunately. And so this time around, we hope that they've truly changed, that we hope that they would actually reflect in the upcoming days in the any arrangement, that they would agree with the sides that are talking to them.
Ambassador Hydari, please stay with me. I have some young voices from Afghanistan, and I want to go across first to Shirin Sogand, TV presenter in Kabul. Ma'am, you've been in Kabul at the time this transition has taken place. What we are hearing from the Taliban is about change, about this being a new Taliban. You're on the ground. Do people in Kabul at this moment, in your view, believe that the Taliban has actually changed the color of their skin, or do you think this is just a ruse, a show being put on for the world till the time everyone leaves and then they'll get back to being their barbaric selves? What's your sense, ma'am, and how are you?
Okay, I just want to ask one question.
Yes, go on.
From the war. When the Taliban name is saved and the world selects as a tourist, so how can we believe the tourist once again? Taliban announced on their confirmed that we are low, but since we are affected, especially in Kabul. I myself, my colleagues, the young ladies, no one can believe them again, and no one would like to follow their rules, because when Taliban are talking about the Islamic rules, it is the definition that they themselves makes for them, and they want or they ask the others to follow. I don't know what is the correct and what is the clear definition of Taliban from Islam. These days they want people to be quiet. That's why they are not saying anything. I just want to share you that the governor of they accused him 3 days ago. So today he killed by them. Why? How kind of excuse is this? How can we feel safe? We cannot go out without mosque. Our journalists, they are home. They are not going out. Just some of the journalists of Flu News that no one do not know that tomorrow, 1 week, or after 1 month, what will be their situation. No one can know. Understand? So we cannot believe a tourist group.
You make some very important points, and I want to put those questions to Professor Faiz Zaland at the Kabul University, because you hear from young people like Shirin Sogand that given what the Taliban did the last time they were in power, there is no way the likes of Shirin Sogand and others can believe that they've changed their stripes. The sense, the apprehension is that they're saying what they are at this moment just so that they can get fully entrenched in power, and then once the world stops bothering them, then they will start showing their real self and they'll come into their true form.
Thank you. I myself having students in Kabul University, our students ages 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. When we are talking about Taliban's era, a 23, 25 years old girl or boy cannot remember what was happening that, because he was not old enough to remember anything from Taliban's era. A person like me must talk about the Taliban's era because I was at that time 15, 16, 17 years old. When someone is 2 years old, 3 years old, 5 years old, how can he judge how the Taliban? All the judgment is coming from the demonization of the media of 20 years war, fight, suicidal attacks, and many other things that Taliban committed against the invasion of US and against the government that they fought. First. Second very important time is that when we talk about peace, we are reconciling with our enemy, the enemy that we fought, the enemy that we were killing each other, the enemy that we were bombing each other. So now it is the peace time. We need to respect each other. We need to hug each other, and we need to work for the future. Let's forget the past. If you are talking about the past, if you are being in the past, we will never move forward. We will never move toward any kind of future. Third very important point is the Taliban are currently in the city. They are in Kabul, but everybody else is having a very normal business. The private universities, girls and boys are attending their classes. Today is Friday, but on Thursday, there were female teachers and lecturers. They attended their classes. You must be having pictures from Herat. You must be having videos from Kabul. You must be listening and watching Tolo News, Ariana News. The female anchors, they are attending their duties. They are communicating and they are reporting Taliban very normally, as they were doing that in the many previous days. The demonization of Taliban, the stereotyping of Taliban, it was part of our fight. It was part of our war against Taliban. But now we need to move on because the fight is gone. We reconciled. We went through a peace process. The former president of Afghanistan, President Ghani, yesterday he said, I'm praising that there is no destruction. I'm praising that there is no war in the city. In Kabul, I will try my best to return to Afghanistan. It is very important to work for peace. It is very important to respect each other and respect the differences that we have. And let's go for the future. So if we are still respecting a president who ruled in Afghanistan for past 7-8 years, you must respect his speech and his talks also. And similarly, there is Dr. Abdullah in the city, Mr. Former President Hamid Karzai is in the city. He has been meeting with the Taliban Shura member, their executive representatives in the city. Things will get normal if we are working for the normality. If we are still in the mood of fighting the Talibans are in the streets, they are in the city of Kabul, go and fight them. But we fought Taliban for 20 years and we couldn't win the war against them. Why not? We should try peace. Let's win the peace and we have a chance and opportunity for winning the peace.
Marzia Mohammadi, are you willing to give peace a chance? Are you willing to give the Taliban a chance? Professor Zalan says, we've tried to fight the Taliban. That didn't go well. Let now bygones be bygones. Let's give peace a chance.
Look, I don't know. I can't seem to agree with the professor because the thing is I can't seem to accept a group of people, a fundamentalist, murderous, radical, terrorist group that is well to the known to be a peaceful group and to actually bring in peace and to stick to their words as they're promising right now. History has proved, they have proved before what they're capable of, what they've done, and I think like Muhammad Sharif said before, their behavior is not matching their words. I've been hearing this a lot in the media that the Taliban has changed, that they're promising to bring peace to people. I would like to add here that my parents in the late 90s, they became refugees because of the Taliban, and although I have not directly had any, I haven't been under the Taliban rule, but my parents have told me when the Taliban came into Afghanistan in the 90s, they came with the same messaging, with the same promises that they're here to bring peace to the Afghans, they're here to bring stability to the Afghans. But I'm afraid that their track record of the past says otherwise. They ran genocidal campaigns against the minorities in Afghanistan, particularly the Hazara people, and at the height of their power in 1998, they ran a genocidal campaign that slaughtered almost 10,000 Hazara people in Mazar-e-Sharif. And right now, as we speak of a peaceful Taliban, I feel like it's wishful thinking, because a peaceful Taliban does not force itself on the country by violence, by creating fear, by creating terror, by walking around the city, pointing their AK-47s, their arms at the people, by opening fire on the protesters on Jalalabad, as it happened yesterday, by killing video journalists or journalists in general. Right now, I can't seem to agree with the professor that life is running as normal, because the footage that is coming out of Kabul right now proves that very, very little presence by women is seen on the streets. I visited Kabul in 2016 and I saw that the city was bustling with life, that women were clearly seen participating in normal life, going to universities, running cafes, businesses, basically participating fully in the society. But the footage that is coming out of Kabul shows that right now you see very little presence by women, because they're very afraid of the terror that Taliban is spreading right now.
Can the Taliban be trusted to change their stripes? Is there at all, Tamanna Ziyar, possible? You've been a student at Kabul University. Do you see a future in Afghanistan under the Taliban, or would you rather stay away in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere?
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for your invitation. I think we have to, for now, we have to believe in them, because whenever they have come, they have most of their promises, and they have told us to, whenever I was in Kabul, I was the third year student of Kabul University in Political Science and International Relations. But whenever we hear that they will come to Afghanistan, so we left Afghanistan, and I have left my university this last semester, and it is a little bit compromising, that they didn't have anything, and they didn't say anything about political parties, and also political participation of women, that we don't know. They will give a chance to women, but they have to give chance to women to be part of political parties, and also they have to be a political participation of women. And I want to come back to our Afghanistan and have more without restrictions, and work for the future of our Afghanistan.
Ambassador Haidari, how do you respond to this point of view that you have to give the Taliban a chance, because at this moment, realistically, there is no other option? The likes of Professor Zalan saying, we fought the Taliban, we didn't win, and therefore at this moment there is no option but to give peace a chance.
Absolutely. We have been trying to give peace a chance for a very long time. Unfortunately, it was the Taliban who closed all the doors on the Afghan people. Remember that the peace process that unfortunately ended up in a fiasco were given more than 2 years, beginning under the Donald Trump administration, which appointed Zalmay Khalilzad to negotiate peace with the Taliban that excluded the Islamic Republic. Despite that, we released over 5,000 terrorists and drug traffickers as a concession, I would say, and as an unprecedented concession in the recent history of conflict resolution and peacemaking, in order to incentivize the Taliban to reduce violence and commit to a ceasefire, and then move on to results-driven peace talks. But unfortunately, they exploited every step of the way until the Biden administration came into the office and with an intention to actually carry out the fiasco that President Donald Trump initiated. And we know where we are today, unfortunately. So they really didn't make peace as they committed. Remember, their commitments included what I just pointed out, including preventing those released prisoners from returning to the battlefield, and as well as cutting ties with regional and global terrorist networks, which has yet to happen. They have currently, as we speak, sheltered the East Turkestan Islamic movement and the Northeast Islamic movement of Uzbekistan. They're also there, as well as Al-Qaeda. And these transnational terrorists actually joined them in capturing northeast of Afghanistan, and they remain a threat to regional peace and security, as well as international peace and security. And this is not what I'm just making up. You can go online and...
No, sure, absolutely. Professor Zalan, Ambassador Hydari has a very important point. This is not a moderate...
Let me finish.
Yeah,
please don't cut off Afghans when they speak.
Please go on. My apologies. Please go on.
Yes. And so there is a report by the UN monitoring team online that discusses all these issues in detail. As a result, unfortunately, the peace that all Afghans expected, the Afghan Islamic Republic expected, with a negotiating team running between Kabul and Doha, sending high-powered delegations, including former President Karzai, and the last delegation that they went to Doha. But unfortunately, they were just dragging their feet and trying to exploit that in support of their battlefield offensives, which ended up displacing hundreds of thousands of Afghans, having destroyed local level, district level state institutions, unfortunately, including public service delivery infrastructure, including culverts, bridges, which today, unfortunately, have expanded this complex humanitarian crisis with hundreds of thousands, and I would say totally the number is over 20 million Afghans needing humanitarian assistance, which the Taliban caused. As a result, one can conclude that they didn't have to do this. They didn't have to destroy the state institutions. They didn't have to destroy the infrastructure of Afghanistan, for internal connectivity as well as external connectivity to ensure, commercial ties and trade ties with the region and outside. So what you see is the hands of foreigners to systematically undo everything that Afghans have achieved, not just, these socioeconomic facilities and opportunities, women's rights, human rights, but absolutely, destroying everything physically even that the, people of Afghanistan have achieved. Unfortunately, today, again, the ball is in their court. They have now achieved everything that they have been after, of course, on behalf of their state sponsor. This is not for Afghanistan. This is not for the Taliban. This is very much for the state sponsor, which has been intent on undoing everything, including erasing Afghanistan's cultural identity. Remember, the Taliban dynamited the statues of Buddha in March 2001. So this time around, they need to fast prove the things that they've been saying behind the mics and the podiums and the statements that are prepared and given to them to read. So Afghans need proof. Afghans need to see the proof immediately, now, today, as we speak. Those changes need to happen. That, the various Afghan groups and voices need to be included, and they need to declare what the professor said.
Professor Zalan, you're being too kind to the Taliban. I agree with a lot of what Ambassador Hydari is saying. Look at what happened during the Doha peace dialogue. They made the promises about peace, which they broke. Look at what they've done with the prisoners who are freed from jail, who are now part of the Taliban fighting against the state forces. And this is exactly what happened in the mid-90s as well, where they came in saying that they would unify Taliban and they would unify Afghanistan, and then there was civil war for the entire period that they were in power. So the fact is that the Taliban have walked back on their promises in the past and in the recent past as well. Why then should the likes of Tamanna Ziyar, Sherin Sogand, Marzia Mohammadi believe them?
So let's not believe. What is the solution?
No, the solution is to say, let the Taliban know that they're not welcome. Afghanistan has changed in the last 20 years. If the people of Afghanistan rise in unison against the Taliban, then the Taliban will be under pressure and not able to entrench itself in power as they would if everybody accepts their rule.
So let's do that. So then what's the solution? Like, what will be the end state?
The Taliban could be pushed back. Right now, they're sitting happy, pretty in Kabul. If the residents of Kabul rise against them, then the Taliban will be vulnerable.
50 countries, the superpower of 21st century, with drones, with mother of all bombs, with B-52. They were not merciful to anyone in the country, not only Taliban, they were not merciful to any Afghan. Even an Afghan who was sheltering them, they were killed and slaughtered. Mother of all bomb was used against those people. B-52, it means so big. You must also show the pictures of what happened and the videos of what happened to those riots and demonstrations that were farmers doing in Delhi, or those of the Islamia University, Jamia Islamia University, they were doing against the C-370. We cannot, with demonstrations, with killing of people, with riots, we cannot say that India government is a terrorist government. We should not be kicked. We should not be throwing things into fire. We need to believe in life. We need to forge peace. We need to work for that. I told you at the beginning, Taliban were the enemy of state. With enemies, you can do two things. One, erase them, completely finish them, defeat them and fight. If you can't reconcile with them, hug them, live with them, work with them, and be peaceful and change them. This is how humans believe. That's what humans do. And 5 of Afghans that you are having on your show, only 2 of us are in Kabul. The 3 others escaped. They are not in Afghanistan. They are not. The Mr. Ambassador is doing a great job in Sri Lanka. He might return one day back to Kabul, and he might be doing his great job to change the Ministry of Foreign Affairs with the Taliban to a very active, to a very prominent structure and diplomatic tool of, as he believes and as everybody else believes to be. It shouldn't work. It shouldn't drive the Taliban's goal. It must drive the Afghanistan goal, the people of Afghanistan goal. That's how we can work. I cannot escape the country. I cannot leave the country. If I will leave and I will return back as Ghani returned, and then I could not help the country with fighting the terrorist groups that they were invaded, what should I do? I have a lesson learned from 20 years. In 20 years, we were not merciful to Taliban. We arrested them, we detained them in Bagram, in Policharki, and even in Guantanamo. We haven't tried them. We put them to Guantanamo against every and each international and national law. But what changed? 5 of them come back. Mullah Fazil is today in Kandahar, and Kandahar people, thousands of people were in streets to welcome Mullah Fazil, the person who was taken to Guantanamo. So we need to be very much realistic, being idealistic and propagandist. We need to believe in our country. We need to, for example, what is Kashmir doing? Kashmiris are fighting. There are Kashmiris fighting against the state. Are you erasing Kashmir? Are you getting away from Kashmir? Or you are working with Kashmiris to transform that into your state? The same thing we should do, a transformation strategy we must have. We cannot erase and eliminate every person who claims that he is a Talib.
Okay, let Marzia Mohammadi respond to it. That, you know, for the likes of Faiz Alan and the others who are in Kabul at this time, you know, to talk about resistance or pushing back the Taliban sounds fanciful. You can complain and crib against them when you're sitting away in Adelaide in Australia, but when you're in Kabul and the Taliban are out on the street, you have no option but to make your peace with them, even if you think that they are the devils in, even if you think that they're devil and they're out on the streets, you have no option but to make your peace with them.
Look, I understand that I am sitting, you know, in a comfortable position away from all the violence and all the terror, and I'm speaking from a place of comfort. So I absolutely acknowledge that privilege. But let me also express concerns that there's a difference between the Taliban's uprising against the state and the Taliban being against the general civilians. But right now, the footage and everything that we see on the ground, every basically reality that the Taliban has imposed on people speaks to the fact that they've actually stood against the people as much as they've stood against the state. Resistance doesn't mean submission. Resistance doesn't mean submitting to a group of people with such fundamental ideology that will never serve the people apart from spreading terror and bringing Afghanistan literally 200 years back for all the gains that people made with blood and sweat, with sacrifices. So resistance must have a form. Resistance must come with accountability. Right now, the people in Afghanistan, all the gains that they've made in the 20 years, every progress that they've achieved, whether it be in the education sector, in infrastructure, in health, all the statistics that you can find on very reputable, credible sources speak to the fact how far Afghanistan came in the last 20 years. To basically sit back and to say, oh, well, right now, because the Taliban is here, we can't really do anything, but to submit to them is giving up. Taliban was never a legitimate force, and we need to accept it. Taliban was given legitimacy by the US, by a flawed peace agreement, by a peace agreement that never included the voices of women, the voices of minority, the voices of vulnerable people, a peace agreement to which the Taliban itself has not, as you can see, the Taliban itself is not respecting the terms of. So once again, although I can't put myself in the position of someone who's in Kabul right now or who's in Afghanistan right now, I think we do need to accept that the people have power. The country is not Taliban's. The country is not the states. The country is the country of the people who have given blood and sweat and sacrifices, who have lost families, who have lost people to bring it to where it was just before the Taliban took over.
Okay, so we've heard different points of view. We can't sit in on judgment because this is for each Afghan to decide for himself what future he'd like to build for his country or her country, and those on the ground have a very different reality, a very stark reality that they need to face about the Taliban being in power. But given their track record, questions about whether you can trust them are more than legitimate. Ambassador Muhammad Ashraf Haidari, Sherin Sogand, Faiz Zaland, Marzia Mohammadi, Tamanna Ziyar, all I can say is that the people of India have always been great friends of people in Afghanistan and the nation of Afghanistan. We only wish you all the very best. We'll track what happens, and we hope that the Taliban will live up to the promises or the claims that they're making, but whether they will is something that we will track very, very closely. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your time and sharing with us your views and your insights.